Good evening, everybody. I hope you are sitting comfortably and welcome to this book launch about the Wits medical graduating class of 1960. In this event, the Dean, Professor Mahdi, will address us. Chaim Rosenberg, who initiated the project, will talk about the book he'd written, and we'll have a panel discussion with a couple of members of our class, moderated by the Assistant Dean, Professor Paula Barnard-Ashton. And Peter Maher, the Director of the Alumni Relations, will wrap up. The program will be recorded and shared with you after the event, and you're also invited to stay on after the formal part if you want to meet and greet people. I'm Geraldine Auerbach. I'm in London. It's my pleasure and honor to be the host tonight, this morning, or however it may be. I'm also Wits graduate of 1960. I was not part of the medical class, but both my brother, Theo Kretsmar, and my husband, Ronnie Auerbach, who I hope are both in our meeting, were, as were many of our friends. My degree was a BA, which I enjoyed immensely. It's wonderful that there are so many of the class of 1960 with us. And almost 60 years, 65 years after they graduated, some are even still working. We also welcome friends and family of members and guests from other classes. With help from friends and from the Alumni Relations Department, Chaim Rosenberg, some of us knew him as Mike Rosenberg at the time, found more than half of his colleagues and persuaded them to send him their stories. He chose topics to write about for newsletters, and his colleagues responded wonderfully. I had the pleasure of working with Chaim, editing, illustrating, and formatting the newsletters written by Chaim himself and some guests written by Avril Faneroff, Gary Katz, Andre van Ass, and others. During 2020, our Diamond Jubilee year, we circulated a dozen newsletters and about 50 biographical sketches. And with Nushin Erfani Gadimi, I devised a website where all this information is stored and can be easily found, and indeed even added to. For many in the class, connecting again with each other after 60 years, receiving these newsletters and bios were the highlight of their lockdown year. We're honored tonight that Professor Shabir Mahdi, the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences, has seen the value of what they've written, spontaneously reflecting on the excellent grounding they had at Wits. Professor Mahdi has been instrumental in the faculty producing this beautiful ebook, which I hope you've all seen. Making this ebook, of course, meant that Chaim and I had to spend the next 2 years re-editing and completely rejigging all the newsletters and biographies into a story, which we hope you will enjoy reading. And we're delighted that Dean Mahdi is here and will address us. As well as being Dean, Professor Mahdi is the director of the South African Medical Research Council Vaccines and Infectious Diseases Analytics Unit. He's internationally recognized for his research on vaccines against the life-threatening diseases of our age in childhood, pregnancy, influenza, pneumonia, and HIV. He led the first 2 COVID-19 vaccine studies undertaken in Africa and has been involved in multiple epidemiological studies on COVID-19 in South Africa. He's received many awards and has been involved in many awards and serves on several international advisory committees, including the World Health Organization. And in 2023, he was made a CBE. by the British government for services to science and public health in a global pandemic. May I invite you, Professor Chabert, to speak to us.
Thank you, Geraldine, and good day, good evening, good morning, everyone, depending where in the world you're joining us. So it's really a pleasure for me as Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences to welcome you to this launch of this ebook. And I think foremost is really credit to Geraldine and Chaim for having led this initiative. This initiative started off in 2021, where there was an outreach to the faculty to host a virtual get-together of the class of 1960. And that was obviously during the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was just at the start of my deanship. So I started in January of 2021, and very soon thereafter, this request came about that we actually sort of have this virtual gathering. And obviously, many of us had sort of migrated to Zoom meetings during the peak of the COVID pandemic. And when I sort of got that initial approach, I sort of glanced through the names of the individuals that made up the class of 1960. And I was really taken aback in terms of recognizing a large number of names that I had come across during my training, and my background is a pediatrician, that I had come across during my training, such as Rosenberg and Fenneroff. And many of them, I just realized then, were really people that had found a grounding in terms of their medical education at Wits University. And clearly, as demonstrated in the ebook, besides those, there's many others that have made significant impact in relation to their work, their research, their provision of healthcare, not necessarily only not in South Africa necessarily, but globally. And I think that is something which Wits really prides itself, is that the graduates that come out from Wits remain competitive, have been competitive and remain competitive and highly sought after globally. People might or might not have seen the latest global rankings of universities that was actually just came out today or yesterday in the US. And often there's a narrative that the quality of our graduates at Wits has diminished, and that the type of graduates that we're graduating are no longer the same as might have occurred in the 1960s, 1970s. I myself qualified in 1990. But the reality is that when you reflect on the standing of Wits, and particularly the Faculty of Health Sciences globally, we still remain amongst the top 1% of institutions globally in the majority of rankings. In fact, in the Faculty of Health Sciences, if you look at some disciplines such as infectious diseases, Wits ranks at number 20 out of 2,500 institutions that actually rank in those rankings. So we're amongst the top 0.1%, let alone the top 1%. So certainly things have changed very much at Wits since the 1960s, and things have obviously changed very much in South Africa. And South Africa certainly has its challenges, a number of challenges. People might or might not be aware of the shortages that we've got in the public health sector to accommodate the large number of doctors that we now graduate. But those challenges are real. But despite those challenges, I think what we pride ourselves as South Africans and as Witsis is that we still remain, that Wits still gives you that edge. It allows you to be competitive, and I think the class of 1960 is really a testimony to the type of edge that Wits provides individuals to make their mark globally. So with that brief introductory comments, again, it's really a pleasure for me as a Dean of the Faculty to welcome you to this launch and really look forward to hearing the reflections of participants in the next hour or so. Thank you.
Very much, Dean Maddy, for those words of welcome. We're very happy to have you with us this evening. I say evening because it happens to be evening, you know, where you are and where we are, but I know that it's different time of the day for others. It's now I'd like to turn to the man himself who's responsible for this whole proceeding, and that is Dr. Chaim Rosenberg, to give us his reflections on the Class of 60 Diamond Jubilee project. You know, standing by to help him and show some pages is Didi Fombard, the charming and dedicated coordinator of the project of this book, production of the book. Very happy to have worked with Didi. Chaim Rosenberg has lived and worked on 4 continents. He was born in Johannesburg, worked in Israel, the UK, and Australia before settling more than 50 years ago in the United States. As well as his MBBCH, he also has an MD from Wits, as well as a PhD from the University of New South Wales, and he now lives in Chicago. He enjoyed a gratifying academic career in psychiatry, affiliated with Harvard and Boston University medical schools. He's written many scientific papers for medical journals and articles about American history. Writing books is not new to Chaim, so this e-book that he has written is no surprise. Since retirement, he's turned to the study of American history, writing 15 published books focused largely on the role of the individual in shaping American greatness. His books have included biographies of innovators in textiles and agricultural machinery that have had lasting impacts worldwide. Other books, some of which have won awards, focus on the Chicago World Fair of 1893 and the Loyalists in the American Revolutionary War. His 2025 book, he hasn't stopped, Children of the American Jewish Ghetto, tells of the struggles and achievements of the American educated children of Jews who came to the United States between 1881 and 1914. So, as the instigator of this whole project and the writer of the book, Mike, please will you talk to us about how it was for you? You'll need to unmute yourself to do that. And we look forward to hearing what you're going to tell us from your side of how this thing panned out and your views of there we are. Okay, you're all good to go.
Okay, thank you, Geraldine. It's a pleasure to see all these wonderful people after all these many, many years. But if Didi will show the first picture. Well, Didi? Well, this is a picture that dates back unbelievably almost 70 years. This is a picture of the anatomy class at Wits Medical School, and as well as dental students, and I think other students. And you have a picture of Dr. Raymond Dart, the famous Raymond Dart in the middle, who was then professor of anatomy. So these are 16, 17, 18, 20-year-olds who were entering medical school and entering dental school. They hardly reflect the composition of South Africa, mostly white people, but that's how things were in those days. This was a period before television came to South Africa, and certainly before the internet and before the computer. Next slide, please. Didi? So for the last 65 years or more, I've been traveling around the world, finding medical school, finding jobs in various countries, and I've kept these pictures. And one day in 2019, I looked at the picture, and the idea occurred to me that I didn't know what became of all these bright young faces, what happened to them. So I thought, why not collect the biographies of the class and see who's alive and who's not alive, who's achieved what and where they're living. So I contacted my dear friends, Dr. Gary Katz in London, and of course, Dr. Ronnie Auerbach, Geraldine's husband in London, and said to them, why don't we have a collection? Why don't we celebrate the class? Ronnie suggested the idea of a diamond jubilee, and he also suggested that I contact Peter Maher in the alumni office to get the thing rolling. And Peter was most helpful, I may add, and he suggested we contact Nushin Efrani, who is the Wits representative in in the United States. And I contacted her, and she was very willing to collate the stories of the various people in the picture. So we began contacting these people, and believe it or not, after 60 years and 60 plus years, we were able to contact more than half of them, and they sent us their biographies. But what do we do with the biographies? So we formed a committee, and the committee consisted of Robert Auerbach, Gary Katz, Avery Fedorov, Jeff Bonner in Israel, Lenny Kahn, and Andrei Fanas. And the key person amongst several key people was, of course, Avery Fedorov, who taught us how to think big and said, make a big deal out of this. So what to do with these pictures and what to do with these biographies? Ronnie suggested we speak to his wife, Geraldine, and Geraldine most graciously offered her skills, and this became the compilation of the story of the class of 1960. Now, this is the story of them. Our estimation is that about 40% of the class emigrated, but 60% remained in South Africa. Amongst us were unbelievably 3 medical school deans, many professors, perhaps 18 or 19 professors, including Martin Bobrow and Arthur Rubenstein, who will be appearing in this program shortly. There have been many textbooks, thousands and perhaps of medical articles, and people who are experts in genetics, pediatrics, medical practice in general. One of our classmates was Tony Myers, who was one of the founders of the Kidney Foundation in South Africa. Another classmate was my Krugersdorp High School fellow student, Gary Costa-Gazidis, who was one of the anti-apartheid leaders of his time, also amongst the graduates in the picture in the front, on the second, standing in the second row on the right-hand side was Aesop Jassett, who was a very major player in the anti-apartheid movement and was a member of our class. The class managed to collect about $20,000, 400,000 rand to help medical students in Johannesburg and Wits to continue their studies. And I must say that I'm most proud of the book that we have produced with Geraldine and Dee Dee and the Wits Medical School. The book is highly illustrated and tells the story of these remarkable people. And it's been my great pleasure to be part of this collaborative effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, it was such a beautiful project that came out of nothing, but really helped a lot of people and has given a picture of Johannesburg in that time, of the country, of what the politics were, what the medical students were, and it's a very worthwhile project that you initiated. So I think we all thank you, and we thank everybody who wrote to you and sent their stories, because that's what made it. Everybody's story is there, and their pictures. The beauty of the ebook is that there are lots of links. So how we've done it so that there may be a chapter on professors and there's a snippet about the people, but you can link to their whole biography, which is on the website. So that's useful. We will also produce on the website a PDF for those people who want to print out a copy and have a physical copy. So you'll have both the advantage of both those possibilities. Now we're going to turn to our panel, and we're very happy to introduce the assistant dean, and that is Professor, where's my little place here? Professor Paula Barnard Ashton. She's been affiliated with the Health Sciences Department since 2001. Her portfolio focuses on student success and faculty development, with a strong emphasis on blended learning and 21st century learning design. As artificial intelligence reshapes higher education, she explores its integration into health sciences teaching. She produces the Blended Beat Coffee Grab podcast and the Blended Beat YouTube channel, offering insights into blended learning in health professions education. She began her academic career as a lecturer in occupational therapy, specializing in pediatric development and Ayers sensory integration. She led e-Fundanathi and e-Zone in the School of Therapeutic Sciences for over a decade. And Professor Paula Barnard Ashton is going to introduce the panel and the discussion today. So please unmute and over to you.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. I really appreciate the introduction. So yes, it is my absolute honor to be involved in this book launch, and I really do respect the opportunity to be part of something so incredible, the amount of work that's gone into this Diamond Jubilee project, and to be among such prestigious names. So thank you for the invitation to moderate the panel. So we're going to have a panel discussion now. The topic is going to be From Wits to the World, and essentially covering how Wits laid the foundation for leadership in medical education and research globally. So the session will explore how Wits University's Faculty of Health Sciences has served as a launchpad for global leadership in medical education and research, as reflected in the journeys of the MBBCH class of 1960 and the current and beyond picture. So the conversation will draw on connections between past excellence and Wits's current role as a world-class health sciences institution. But first, let me introduce our panel members. First, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Arthur Rubenstein, who was the Executive Vice President of the University of Pennsylvania for Health System and the Dean of the Raymond and Ruth Perelman School of Medicine from September 2001 to July 2011. He served for 4 years as Dean of the Mount Sinai School of Medicine and Gustav L. Levy Distinguished Professor. Earlier, he was the Lowell T. Coggleshaw Distinguished Service Professor of Medical Sciences and Chairman of the Department of Medicine at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. Dr. Rubenstein is an internationally prominent endocrinologist recognized for clinical expertise and groundbreaking research in diabetes. Well known for his inspired teaching, Dr. Rubenstein has served on numerous professional leadership positions over his career. As author of more than 350 publications, Dr. Rubenstein is the recipient of many prestigious awards. He received his medical degree from Wits University, where he was honored by his alma mater with an honorary degree in 2001. Welcome, Dr. Rubenstein.
Thank you.
All right. Secondly, on our panel, we have Professor Martin Bobrow, who is joining us this evening. He also studied medicine at Wits and then joined the MRC Population Genetics Unit in Oxford. He was Professor of Medical Genetics at the University of Amsterdam, Guy's and St. Thomas's Hospitals, and the University of Cambridge, and Director of the SE Thames and East Anglian Regional Genetics Services. He has also served as the Deputy Chairman of the Wellcome Trust and Nuffield Council on Bioethics, Chairman of Committee on medical aspects, of medical aspects of radiation in the environment, and unrelated living transplant regulatory authority. He's a member of the MRC Council, the Human Genetics Advisory Commission, the NHS Central R&D Committee, and a non-executive director of the Cambridge University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. Welcome, Professor Barbara.
Thank you very much for that.
Good. And then joining the panel this evening, we will also have our current Dean, Professor Shabir Mahdi, to highlight the current landscape and future directions of the Faculty of Health Sciences at Wits. So welcome to the panel as well, Prof. Mahdi.
Thank you, Paula.
All right, so thank you. Prof. Mahdi, I don't know if you want to turn your camera on for the panel as well.
I would love to, but ours has disabled my video.
Okay, that's perfect, as long as we can hear you. All right, so I think firstly, we'd really like to talk about what has made Wits exceptional. And so maybe if I can pose the first question to Dr. Rubenstein, what aspects of your Wits training laid the groundwork for your leadership roles abroad? And then I'll pose the question to Prof. Barbara, and then Prof. Mahdi, if you can come in with the more local aspect of how you think Wits training laid the groundwork for leadership.
Thank you, Paula. So I was thinking about that prior to this meeting, and I just thought about the most extraordinary people that were my teachers, mentors, role models. For a small university in the Southern Hemisphere, far from America, England, Europe, and so on, there were absolutely remarkable people who were both inspiring leaders and really wonderful in terms of role models. Many of them had trained overseas, most in the UK, but some in America and a few in Europe as well. And they came back and blended their South African expertise with the things they had learned from overseas, which probably in many ways was unique. You know, I was thinking about mentioning a few of them, and there's so many, I'm sure I'll leave out some, but just quickly to say a few: Toby Arnold, Philip Tobias, Paul Levy, Sydney Brenner, of course, Joseph Gilman, Christine Gilbert, Bothwell, Elliott, Duplessis, Jack Metz, Shamroth, Seftel, Jaime Stein, and others. I could go on, so forgive me if I've left some out, but these were absolutely extraordinary people. And when we interacted with them, they were inspiring and created a kind of an atmosphere of teaching and learning that actually, now that I've been all over the world with other opportunities, still come back to thinking it was really unique. That was one thing. Maybe I'll mention the second thing too, is we had a remarkable group of colleagues, classmates. We've talked about what Chaim and Geraldine did with the history of this class, but it's hard to describe the kind of camaraderie, pleasure we had in each other's company, the fun we had. These days, people, particularly young people, to me seem to have less fun. We had such a good time together. We studied hard, it was true, and spent a lot of time at that. And there was plenty to learn. But during our off time, which we made plenty of, we did all kind of interesting things together that I won't bore you, but it made life very special. And of course, we continued that 65 years later. I'm still in touch with many of them, and that's something rather unique, I think, in terms of pleasurable societal camaraderie. So maybe to summarize, there was a very special atmosphere at Wits, something kind of unique that's hard to reproduce or define, but really characterized by extraordinary people, older and younger and in between, who made the whole thing so inspirational and wonderful. And I remember many of the lectures. Here we are 65 years or 70 years almost. I can remember them. And when I discuss them with people like Jeffrey Maisel, Zavroy Vanroff, Ronnie Aubach and others, Rodwin Jackson and so on, we all laugh and remember how we kind of coped with all the things going on with a sense of humor. So maybe I'll stop there and just say it was something very special, people-driven, but collectively atmospheric in terms of place.
Great, thank you. I mean, I think that's very profound, and the value of people and those that you can collaborate with that keep you going, especially through studies, I think is something that we do need to instill in our students today as well. Prof. Barbaro, would you like to reflect briefly?
Well, thanks. And it is really a pleasure being here, and I am lost in admiration for the people who put in this backbreaking amount of work to get us to this point. I would never have thought of doing it, and I couldn't have done it even if I had thought of it. On the subject, so I absolutely agree with Arthur. It was the first thing that I wrote down was people. We did have a quite extraordinary group of teachers. I thought for myself, this is all very subjective, that they not only taught us the facts of the science and medicine that we were interested in, but I think they taught attitudes, and they managed to steer, at least for me, a kind of path between demanding respect and giving us a lot of rain. So I came out of that not feeling downtrodden. In fact, I came out of my training feeling that I would not believe anyone who didn't have evidence for the claims they were making. And I was more interested in the backing facts than I was in authority as such. And that's not uniformly true amongst the other places that I have seen and been. Amongst the people, let me add two names that I've been in touch with very often, who were my best friends as I went through medical school. One was Laurie Geffen, and the other is Clive Rosendorf, the other two deans in the triumvirate that were mentioned earlier. Both unbelievably talented people, and being able to work with colleagues like that and many of the rest of you, I think made a very big difference. I thought in retrospect that I learned to work extremely hard at Wits. I didn't do that all the time. I spent quite a bit of time in the cafe across the road. I learned some pinball skills from Arthur Vinnick. I certainly played a lot of bridge, but when I worked, I really worked. And one of the reasons for that in the clinical years, and even before then, was that I think we were given a degree of responsibility and freedom of operation, which made us not only have to take care of ourselves, but also meant that the rewards of doing a job like that became apparent very early. Lastly, because the prompt that I was given was to think about leadership and academic success, so I don't know how to answer that, but the person who most shaped my career was Philip Tobias. What I remember most is Philip Tobias running a seminar for his science class, which we went into in third year. And he did this over a long period of time. Every week, one person would have to prepare a seminar, deliver the seminar, and there was then an equal period of time during which everyone else was expected to criticize the seminar, not only its content, but its presentation. You know, that didn't feel that great the first time. I think it made a stunning difference to all of us in forcing us to marshal our ideas, to keep our arguments hard, and to argue from factual backgrounds rather than from arm waving and emotion. And I could go on about those things for a while, but I think those were absolutely fundamental formative influences on me as a rather scurrilous youngster at that age. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm happy to report that by 30 odd years later, Prof. Tobias wasn't doing that to us occupational therapy students. So we weren't put on the spot quite in the same way at that phase. Prof. Mardi, do you want to reflect on how Wits has instilled your leadership philosophy?
Yeah, thanks, Paula. And without having caucus with Dr. Barbara and Rubenstein, in fact, the first thing on my list was the people. And the success of Wits, the ongoing success of Wits, still is totally because of the people and the privilege of the type of people that we have in our midst, from the clinicians, occupational therapists, physiotherapists across the board. We've got a highly dedicated group of individuals now, as we had in the past. And I really think that certainly Wits wouldn't be what it is, and it wouldn't have the reputation that it has, were it not for our teachers and their commitment. But what else sort of really drives the type of people that come out from the Wits are the students. And I think we're fortunate and remain fortunate in that we're able to attract those students that are in a top tier, that are coming out from school, as well as we now got a postgraduate entry program into medicine. And even then, we're highly fortunate in that we're able to attract really top students. And it's by us being able to attract those top students that ensures that the legacy that we've built continues. So for those, I mean, certainly I think the class of 1960, there were probably 50 students in a class. We now graduate close on to about 350 students each year. And out of the 350 students, about 250 students come in from school, and another 150 students come in after they've done another degree as a graduate entry medical program, which they enter into a 4-year program for medicine. But the important thing is that the competition to get into Wits still remains just exceptional. We get close on to 18,000 applicants for the 250 positions that are available. So we're highly fortunate in that we're able to select out the creme de la creme of students. We have changed our criteria for admission just to redress the inequities of the past. And I think that's something we can't sort of not talk about. And that change actually took place a few years ago and was refined more recently. So unlike a few years ago where there was sort of admission with quota systems put in place to enable people from certain demographic groups to be more competitive to gain entry, we actually have now moved away completely from a race-based quota. And rather what we now have done is that we've got students that come from very low socioeconomic conditions, where they attend no fees paying schools, what we refer to as quintile 1, 2, and 3 schools. And then we've got the more students that come from a more privileged background. And it's we put it into place last year. And much to my surprise, despite there being obvious differences between the students in terms of their matric marks when they left school, by the end of the first year, the pass rate of the students that came from the least privilege was exactly the same as the pass rate of those students that came from more privileged backgrounds. And that is not by magic. Again, it came down to the people. It's because of the support structures that we have been able to put in place and the type of staff that we have that are able to support the students, that we're able to make a success of students that enter into our programs. So again, I think the bottom line is Wits is what it is because of the people, because of the commitment of our teachers of the past as well as the present.
Thanks, Prof. Mardi, and yes, I absolutely concur. I think one of the wonderful things is how our MBBCH program has grown over the years, and that we're still able to maintain the standard and produce excellent graduates into the healthcare landscape. So I think that brings me to my next question, and that is really around why do our alumni excel globally. So why do you think Wits graduates perform so well internationally? And maybe Prof. Barbara can lead this discussion.
Well, I can certainly start it by saying I don't really know. I do think that previous discussion brought out some of the things that are really important. These are not people who are time servers in general, at least it wasn't then, and from what I know, it isn't now. They're people who do a job that needs doing, and they do it until it's done, rather than looking at the clock and saying, well, it's 4:30, I think time to start packing up now. I think they're people who are not afraid to challenge authority, because frankly, we, and still today, most of you, have seen how fallible authority really is, and it doesn't produce the sort of reflex will to just fit in with what you're told to do. And I think those are an important background to people being willing to forge their way in the world and move to the front when it's necessary. However, I'm sure 1,000 people will have better ideas. Thank you.
Well, let's see what Dr. Rubenstein has to say.
Well, I think I do agree with Martin on a lot of things, and I do agree about that. We didn't seem to be afraid of hard work, and I think maybe that was part of the ethos of growing up in South Africa at that time. But maybe there were a couple of other things in terms of medicine that shaped us. Our clinical training was really, really extraordinary. Now that I've had opportunity to look at it all over, I would say it's hard to beat the clinical training, which was in place at that time and probably continues until this day. The role models we had in terms of clinicians, and again, I can't mention all of them, was inspiring and exciting, and to do rounds with them around the bedside was like something very, very special. And then when I emigrated, of course, to the United Kingdom and trained at Hammersmith, it was pretty much the same as this. Many, many eminent clinicians and role models, and grand rounds there and around the bedside was something special. Just to contrast that, when I went to the University of Chicago, what was obvious was people did talk about patients, but they usually talked about them at a distance, talking about the science and genetics and immunology and so on. And then they kind of related it to the patient somewhat indirectly at times. But we were able to integrate those two in a way that was very, very special. And as I've talked to my colleagues all over and looked at the success of people who've graduated both in our class but others, this idea of science underpinning clinical medicine or clinical medicine enhanced by science is something I think we did rather better than many, many other people. And doing that gave us a leg up in terms of stature and success and attraction for students and so on. So I've often thought about that, but if you look at many of our graduates, they will espouse those very characteristics, and I think they are somewhat unique and South Africa driven in many ways.
Absolutely. I think that rings so true, even for me from an occupational therapy perspective. A lot of my classmates immigrated almost immediately after graduation, and their ability to build relationships with patients, I think, was one of the things that kept them embedded in some of the international fora. Prof. Mardi, what is your perspective?
Yeah, I very much agree. I think the average Wits graduate is highly confident by the time they complete the degree. And part of it is because of the tutors that we've got, but also the sort of paradox in that we're unique. And I would think that South Africa is actually fairly unique in that we've got a reasonably well-established healthcare system. The public healthcare system does have its challenges, but it's still fairly well established compared with what exists in many other settings of a similar sort of economic status. But at the same time, we've got a high burden of disease. And the type of exposures that students get when being trained at Wits is second to none. There's very few places that you can go throughout the world where students will get a type of exposures that they do from a wide spectrum of disease that really equips them. And although they might not feel confident after they've graduated at Wits, is when they go out in the real world, including going out to do electives in the UK and the US, that's when they realize just how well prepared they've become because of the type of exposure. So eventually the confidence comes to the fore when they start engaging with people from outside of the university and outside of the country, and they really recognize that the type of training that they've received at Wits is somewhat unique.
Just in that regard, I might remind Avril Fenroff was reminding me one day that as 4th or 5th year medical students, we were placed at Alexandra Township as part of our clinical training with very little supervision. And there were all kind of serious problems that we had to deal with. So as Professor Marty said, we developed a lot of confidence. We would ask questions, but in the end, we were able to really look after very sick patients very effectively. And I think that carried with us throughout our careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the nature of the diagnostic profiles that we see in South Africa with the comorbidity rates creates a practitioner that has to think critically and be able to use their clinical reasoning in a very unique way that maybe other environments don't quite build in to the system just organically. So I think that's a good segue, Dr. Rubenstein, if you want to reflect briefly on a moment where you believe that your training gave you the edge. What in your career is there a moment in time where you believe your training gave you the edge? A situation or a scenario, a story?
That's a challenging question. I guess the one that stands out, when I went to the United States, I went as a postdoctoral fellow, which is like a low-level entry science opportunity. It was actually created by one of our South African colleagues, Dr. Godfrey Getz, who was at the University of Chicago and helped recruit me to there. And so I used to go to endocrine rounds because I had been training in endocrinology at Hammersmith Hospital with Sir Russell Fraser. And we used to do these rounds, and I remember very clearly there were all these professors around, and I was in the lowly group of foreign people sitting at the back. Anyway, they presented a patient, I won't go through the details, with severe hypoglycemia. And I remember clearly they really didn't know what was going on, but I'd seen several of these patients at Baragwanath Hospital and NEH and so on. And so I gently put up my hand and I said, I think what's actually the problem here, and I enumerated it pretty clearly. And after that, it was pretty much, let's ask Arthur what's going on here. So I do remember things like that which happened. And again, it reflected on the outstanding clinical training that I had had and been beneficial of. I might just say, I remember these rounds that we had with people like Jaime Isaac, Salisbury, and others, which the American medical thing tend to sit around and then the patient would be somewhat upfront and so on. Whereas we were involved around the bedside showing or listening to history and physical science. It was a whole different set of excitement that imbued us and made us, I think, just better physicians, doctors, scientific physicians, and so on. So again, the role models and the training we had was really extraordinary.
Absolutely. Prof. Barbara, is there a moment that really stands out for you?
Well, I don't, because of the rather different path that I followed, it's not quite that sort of direction. I suppose the moment that really made a difference to me and where I went was during the middle part of my career, when I began to look around and wondered what I was really interested in. I knew I was interested in biology and medicine, and I was offered the opportunity, as I think the whole small BSc class were, of working with the Department of Anatomy on various studies to do with human variation. And I spent some quite happy times going out to various locations around Johannesburg, measuring how long various people's ears and noses were. After which I asked Philip Tobias whether this was really the best way to study genetics and the basic things that drive the differences between people. And rather than telling me to be quiet, he sort of went away, and he came back the next day saying, why don't we start doing color blindness tests, which were then, the Ishihara plates were new, but they were there, and they just hadn't been widely used outside of a clinical context. So I spent quite a lot of my vacations for the next couple of years rushing around various bits of rural Africa, including the Kalahari, waving color blindness tests and the ability to taste a substance called phenylketonuria, which are simply inherited traits, in order to look at the truly genetic differences between different subtypes of people in this mosaic continent. And that's essentially what I did for the rest of my life. Finished.
Okay, thank you. So that really set up your research platform as a pastime, from a pastime to an endeavor that lasted a lifetime. And Prof. Marty, is there a time in your training that stands out for you that has shaped your current or your recent practice?
Yeah, well, so I've been at Wits since 1985 when I started as a first year student. And 40 years later, I'm still at Wits, not having ever worked outside of South Africa or outside of Wits. But if I reflect back, as a student, I was really mediocre. I probably spent much more of my time outside of the class than inside. I was much more busy with the Black Students Committee affairs. And there were reasons for that, obviously. But perhaps the turning point for me was when I was provided opportunity after having just completed my pediatric training in 1996 to join Keith Klugman, who now is at the Gates Foundation, and he moved to the US in 2001 to join his research team. And he offered me this opportunity of being the clinical lead of the largest vaccine study that has ever been undertaken, even to today, on the African continent, where we enrolled about 40,000 children in Soweto. And that was a pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. And I thought it was going to be a 3-year job, and I was going to return to clinical practice like most other pediatricians would. And 30 years later, I'm still doing research on vaccines. And so that was really sort of the golden opportunity for me. And much of the work that's been done in my research unit since has really contributed to clinical development of vaccines that is not just relevant to the African continent, but that has been recommended by the WHO to be deployed globally. And I think without that sort of opportunity, something that I certainly wouldn't have been able to contribute the manner in which myself and my research unit has been able to contribute to childhood health. So we can really pride ourselves that, again, it's because of the opportunities that exist within our environment that we can have people excel eventually in their careers.
Absolutely, and I think you brought up the time in which you and I were graduating or at Wits and the transition time. But so I think we all studied during the apartheid era, and so maybe that brings up the next topic on how did being trained during the apartheid era in South Africa kind of shape your ethical and social outlook? And Prof, seeing as you're apt to, do you want to begin?
Well, I think we will run out of time if I were to really reply to that. The reality is, like I said, I graduated in 1990, and that was the time when the ANC and the National Party started to go into serious discussion on transitioning to a democracy. But certainly during my time as a medical student, the type of exposures that students of color received and the training that they got, unfortunately, wasn't on par with white students, and I think that's the stark reality. In fact, I recall when I was in fifth year, the university itself, leadership in the university, were actually in support against Black students rotating through the obstetrics department at the then Johannesburg hospital, because they felt that white pregnant women would feel uncomfortable having a student of color examine them. So I don't think that Wits as an institution doesn't have sort of legacy issues to deal with. They certainly were at the forefront in terms of promoting access to university for people of color. But I think there's still a lot that needs to be sort of addressed and redressed. And that's the reason why I believe the transformation still remains, even 30 years into our democracy, an important component of what we do at Wits, and why we need to ensure equity in access, even if it's not race-based, but there needs to be equity to access to training, so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past.
Absolutely. Prof. Bobo, do you have any comments?
Well, you know, briefly, I can remember as a late teenager in an affluent bit of Johannesburg being absolutely disgusted by the way in which the inequality that various people were treated in the ways they were treated, and the complete injustice and inhumane nature of the system made me decide at a very early age that that was a system that ought not to be in existence. Possibly the hardest choice that I've ever made was to decide much later on whether that led to me staying and trying to fight to overthrow the system, or going and doing what I thought I could probably do better. And I'm still not sure whether I made the right choice. I went because I didn't think I'd make much difference in what I then thought was likely to end up in a bloody mess, which it didn't, but I didn't have the imagination to see that. So I admire very much the people who stayed and stuck it out, but I went. It left me with a set of ethical and moral principles which I have used in clinical ethics and professional ethics, where much the same sort of thing applies in slightly less dramatic a way. Lasted me again for a lifetime.
Absolutely. And Dr. Rubenstein, from your perspective?
I think Martin expressed it extremely well. So I married a beautiful woman who unfortunately passed away 18 months ago, Dr. Denise Rubenstein, Denise Hack. And we married, she was my resident actually, and we married after medical school, and we had a young son, we had a child. And the system was absolutely intolerable to both of us. It was a really, really difficult decision because both our parents were there and growing old and needed attention that we could provide. But the thought of bringing up a young child in that kind of thing, that kind of atmosphere, that kind of inequality and horror, was pretty much like Martin said. Either you could stay there and fight the system, which maybe we didn't have the courage or energy to do, I'm not sure. Although we did what we could through the SMC, and as Chaim mentioned, Jacet was in our class and a really wonderful role model colleague. But in the end, it just seemed if we were going to survive with our principles in place, and think about other things rather than the injustice and discrimination and so on all around us, it would be better to leave. And we did that, even though it was very, very difficult. And of course, we left behind all kind of important things. And the loss to South Africa, to all these people who immigrated, is incalculable in a way, because I think if it wasn't for apartheid, most of us may have stayed there, I think. And those who did, we admire, and they had a lot of courage. So, and I might mention Jeffrey Masel's father was the QC in the Rivonia trial, the treason trial with Mandela. So it was really something that we came up with almost every day. I think that was in the early 60s. So, you know, that atmosphere and the kind of pain of it all kind of lived with us forever, as Martin said. And maybe it also colored the way I behaved from then on in America, because although there wasn't apartheid, there was plenty of discrimination, and that allowed us to fight as hard as we could for equality as well in a more amenable society at that time. So one can think about these things with interest of what might have happened, but that's how it all turned out.
Okay, thank you so much. So I do want to start bringing the discussion to a close, because I am aware of the time. So I've got a different question to Prof. Mardi as opposed to our Diamond Jubilee members. Prof. Mardi, how do you see Wits evolving to maintain its global leadership in health sciences?
Wow, that's a difficult question. Like I said, I mean, I think to some extent the numbers speak for itself. I started off my introduction by making mention of that in the latest global rankings of universities, and there's a number of different rankings that they use, Wits still remains amongst the top 1% of institutions, and the Faculty of Health Sciences certainly well within that 1%. But at the same time, the reality is that the country as a whole is facing a number of challenges. Our training of students is being compromised, and it's really demanding more of it's being compromised because of the challenges being experienced in the public health sector, where unfortunately quality of care in the public health sector is on the down. So it really requires innovation on our part in terms of how we sort of bridge that emerging gap. And to some extent, there's already sort of initiatives underway, some of which have started well before my deanship, where we're needing to be much more purposeful in terms of engaging with the private sector. And certainly the private sector in South Africa is pretty much the same, provides the same type of healthcare and has the same sort of resources compared with what will exist in any high-income country. So for me, the big challenge that we face now is to see how we sort of interface between the public and the private sector to ensure that we can get our students, both undergraduate as well as postgraduate students, to have the broad spectrum of exposures in terms of pathology, but also in terms of the latest in technology and treatment modalities. So I think we will survive. We've gone through a number of sort of ups and downs in our history as an institution and as a country, but I'm confident that South Africans, being who we are, and for those of you that follow cricket, you would have heard that we won the World Cup series, the World Cup, Test series just last week, in addition to which we World Cup champions in rugby. This year we've had the 100-meter sprint being the record time being held by a South African. South Africa won the men's for the 100-meter diamond event in South Asia. So I think as a country, we've got a lot of challenges, but we still got lots of talented people. And I think within our faculty, we've got a lot of talented people, and they are the ones that we can count on to pull us through and to keep the momentum going.
Absolutely, thank you. And then let's start with Dr. Rubenstein. Maybe, can you tell us a little bit about what being part of the class of 1960s legacy means to you, and what advice you would give to our current students?
That's a tall order. First of all, I want to thank Geraldine and Chaim, who created this wonderful thing, and finding new ways of connecting with people I'd lost contact with, learning about their accomplishments in history, and then meeting them and talking to them at various meetings or on Zoom has been a special privilege. I must say, I was in Singapore a little while ago, and before he died, Sidney Brenner was there. And he grew up in Germiston, actually, the son of cobbler, in fact. And as you know, he won the Nobel Prize and was one of the great South African scientists. And when we talked about it, he talked about the same kind of thing, the special camaraderie that he felt with South African graduates all over the world, and that he had kept in touch with them despite his eminence. He was a very down-to-earth and straightforward person. So I think the advice I would give to people, although, old people give advice, but nobody should follow it, I would guess, is, try to follow your passion, do what's exciting, try to live a good life in terms of family, and then make the best of even difficult and challenging circumstances, because with a little luck, things can turn out well. And, that's happened to many of us through good fortune. So I would say, despite the many challenges, and we have many of them today, both in South Africa, but in America too, as you know, one should be optimistic and, move forward and hope that you'll be able to do good things in the world.
Thank you. Prof. Barbara?
I'm not sure that I give advice to anyone. I've been extraordinarily lucky. I've achieved much more than I ever deserved to. And the only advice I would give to anyone else is try to be lucky too.
Oh, a wonderful.
Yeah, he doesn't know the formula. All right, so thank you. I'll hand back to Geraldine now. But thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed the discussion.
And thank you, Paula. It was really excellent. And really, Martin and Arthur, how you've pinpointed these questions, these searching questions that were asked, I think are brilliant. Thank you. And thank you, Dean Mahdi, to give us the current perspective. So here, if you want to know more about the stories of these wonderful people of the class of 60, it's all in the book. So I hope that you are going to enjoy this. We started by talking about the colleagues with the conscience. That was Aesop Jesset and Costiga Desidas. And we're very sad to hear that just in the last few weeks, Costa passed away, and also Naomi Livni, who was part of our project, passed away a couple of months ago. But it's amazing that people are here. We discussed our preclinical years, and here Lawrence Geffen, who went on to become the dean of the medical school in Australia, wrote personal memos about monographs, shall we say, about both Raymond Dart and Philip Tobias, which are really exceptional because they are personal stories. And what is lovely about this book is it's not about CVs, it's not about, achievements. It's the human story of all these doctors, which I'm sure you will enjoy reading. We went to talk about where they came from. And to me, an interesting part of this was that there were a large bunch of people from various schools, students who already knew each other, who already were competing in the classroom and the sports field, who then came together at Wits and continued. There was an amazing atmosphere in this particular class, and I think it's because of this. There were about 8 boys from Parktown High School, Boys High School, now, and 4 from Parktown Girls High School. Now, I asked them, did you have a science teacher who inspired you? And all of them said, oh, Fluky, you know, he wasn't inspiring whatsoever. It was only when I got to Wits and I met Joe Kaminer and Philip Tobias that I was inspired. We had 11 boys from Highlands North who came into this class, and 9 from KES, from King Edward School. And I think that the dynamism of this was something special. But it's wonderful that we've captured this, and you can read about their school days, their university days, and their careers in the book, which we hope you've looked at. We talk about the hospitals they trained at, the Joburg Gen, and all the non-European hospitals. Baragwanath is amazing. You know, my brother says that that's helped him in his whole career because he knew things. You know, he spoke about doing a locum in Farnborough where 3 sailors wrapped their car around a lamppost. And he was called in the middle of the night. He said he sent the head injury to the neurological systems. He took out the spleen and the ruptured spleen and the liver. He dealt with it and he dealt with that. And when the chief came in the morning, he said, "Why didn't you call me?" And he said, "Well, sir, when last did you see a ruptured spleen?" And the chief was really extremely happy that he'd managed it successfully all by himself. So we talk about Baragwanath. There's a whole chapter about the thoughts, you know. I love the story that Avroy said that they asked one of these patients who was in for, you know, perhaps psychiatric work, "Do you hear voices?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "What do you hear?" He said, "Calling Dr. Seftel, calling Dr. Seftel." And so, you know, these are interesting personal stories, and we hope that you'll enjoy them very much. I also wanted to say that this wasn't a vanity exercise, that every one of the people who are part of this project contributed significantly to the Philip Tobias Fund, and part of the purpose of doing this was to be helpful to the next generation of students at Wits. So it just remains for me to thank everybody, to thank Chaim on behalf of Chaim and myself. We give our heartfelt thanks to all those who participated today, but to all those who participated in the project by sending their stories. It's all about you. We've just put it together, and Chaim has told the story. So thanks to our speakers today, to Paula and Arthur and Martin, to Dean Xavier, to Didi, who's been the most wonderful coordinator in the production of the book, and her helpers, Beth Amato, Leanne Harwood, and others, and to Nushin Efani Gadimi, who made the website and looks after it. That was something amazing. You can still see the website, and the book has hundreds of links to the website. So if you want to see the website, just go to the book, which we've given you access to, and you'll find access there when you want it. So thank you to all the people who've who've given the contributions to the book, and I dare say it gives their contributions to the health and welfare of countless people in many parts of the world. We're so grateful to Peter Meyer, the Director of the Alumni Relations, for all the help his department has given to us. And Peter will close the formal part of the proceedings. But if you'd like to stay behind after the formal part, we hope we'll have a chance for you to see each other's little pictures and to say hello if you want to. So do stay on behind if you'd like to do that. So, Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Geraldine. You've already done an amazing tribute for me, but let me say thank you. Firstly, can I say what an honor and privilege it is to be in such esteemed company and to share in this occasion with you. Congratulations to the Dean, Professor Shabir Mahdi, Didi Fombad, and Beth Amata for assisting and supporting this fantastic initiative that does the faculty and university proud. Chaim or Mike Rosenberg, your initiative in launching the Class of 1960 project is an absolute inspiration that can be a best practice template for all medical classes. If a call to action is needed, then it would be for past and future generations of classes to follow your shining example. Huge congratulations to you, Geraldine Albach, who edited this magnificent world-class book. It is an incredible tribute to the class of 1960 and a gift to future generations and to posterity. You've succeeded admirably in your effort to acknowledge and honor the class and present a slice of life at Wits at an historically important moment in time. Of course, the book does raise the issue of whether this class is an exception, and it's been part of the theme of this evening. I think it's been addressed. Certainly the success and achievements of the class of 1960 are remarkable, absolutely incredible. But you know the saying, the exception proves the rule. As Prof. Mahdi has mentioned in his remarks, Wits has always produced exceptional graduates and will always continue to do so. The impact of Wits University on the world stage cannot be overstated. Its graduates excel in their chosen professions and make an enormous contribution to society. Graduates of the medical school in particular have advanced the practice of medicine and medical knowledge wherever they are in the world. The class of 1960 is part of the foundation of excellence on which the university's enviable reputation has been built. It is a reputation that is built on the shoulders of giants that both produced the class of 1960 and which emanated from the career success and achievements of the class of 1960. The university is extremely fortunate that you have retained a lifelong sense of gratitude, loyalty, and affection for your alma mater. We certainly hope this bond will continue to be actively maintained and strengthened in the years to come. So once again, well done and congratulations to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you again to everybody. So, so the book is now well and truly launched. Roy, why don't you?
Thank you, Geraldine. I thought the program was outstanding. I think the job that you, Didi, and the rest of the team did is outstanding. And all in all, I think it's pretty remarkable that some 65 years later, we're gathering to reminisce about our class. And I think that Mike is a genius for coming up with the idea to all gather and to record what we've done in our lives. And I think Martin hit it on the nail when he said, we're blessed, we're lucky. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say hi. Arthur, you and Martin were great. Dean, I'm not sure if he's still on. The Dean was very insightful.
Very, very good. Thank you. Gary Katz, where are you, Gary? I don't see your picture. Can Gary Katz have a picture? And you can unmute and talk to us.
Thank you all for producing this amazing book, but also this amazing evening and the launch. It really gives one something to be proud of. And I'd like to wish all my colleagues who I can't see but are here tonight all the very best from London. It's great being with you all.
Thanks, Gary. Chaim.
Well, I thank you, Geraldine. It's a pleasure to be amongst such a company. I was just reflecting, I think many of us are now patients ourselves and see the other side of the medical story. One of the things that amazes me being in Chicago and seeing a variety of doctors is that they hardly ever touch me. They look at the screen all the time and they look at the results on the screen of my various tests, and then they tell me what to do. But I keep saying, why don't you examine the patient? And I think what Arthur and Barbara were saying is that what we learned in Wits was to talk to the patient directly and to touch the patient and to find out what's wrong with the patient from the patient's perspective rather than at the CAT scan or the blood test perspective. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone want to respond to that? Alan, I wonder whether you'd like to say something to us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was part of the 1969 graduation class, and many of the people who've spoken this evening were my teachers, in fact. And I remember, Avroy, you putting IVs into babies that weighed a pound or two, and you did so deftly, and your fingers, I recall your fingers as being very definitive in the way that they worked and so on at Baragwanath. It's a memory that I won't forget easily. It's difficult for another class, and mine is the class of 1969, to emulate the excellence of the 1960 class. That said, we have done in our own small way remarkable things. I was at Hammersmith, as many of you were in my training, and was there for 2 years, trained under J.C. McClure-Brown in the Department of Obstetrics, and then later my immediate trainer was Robert Winston, now Lord Winston of Hammersmith. And when I came over to the United States in 1977, having spent 2 years at Hammersmith in London and a bit of time in Ireland as well, there were 104 medical graduates in my class. Of the 104, 17 were in Boston being trained at the time that I came here. And I think I largely came to Boston because I knew I'd get a free meal. Someone would put me up for the evening and possibly introduce me to the medical community here, and they did. And I got a job at the Beth Israel Hospital, which is one of the teaching hospitals at the Harvard Medical School. And I joined that in 1977 and have had a nice, productive career there, made a lot of friends, had a lot of opportunities, and integrated myself into a very robust and productive set of physicians, many South Africans, but many others as well. So that while your class is difficult to emulate from the standpoint of achievement, in our small way, we've got a number of full professors, a number of very excellent clinicians, and we enjoy collectively as South Africans a very excellent name in the community over here, not only in our 1969 class, but many other classes as well. So we've done well, probably collectively not as well as the 1960 class, but we've left our mark in our own way, and we're respected and admired, and I'm proud to be part of that. Thank you for putting it together. I've really enjoyed seeing many of the people who formed my career and taught me through the years this evening, and their achievements are difficult to emulate, but as I say, we've done well in our own small way.
Alan, thank you. I think what we've tried to show tonight was that although we know this class, Professor Shabir showed that as well, that this was Wits. You know, every class produced its stars, and it's and a really raft of wonderful clinicians. So I think that's one of the messages that we wanted to bring out in this session, that, you know, we don't really think we were special. You know, we're trying to look to see whether there were any reasons that there might have been a wonderful atmosphere. But, you know, this was Wits that produced these fantastic people. Would anybody else like to say something? Perhaps Gloria, would you like? Yes, go on.
Hello,
Go
can
on.
you see me? Can you see me?
Hello.
We can see and hear you, Gloria.
Yeah. There are so many stories I could relate about my time at Wits, but there are two stories I think I'd like to just tell everybody. The first is that when I taught at Baragwanath, I used to teach an anesthetic registrars how to examine patients so that they could know how to present during their exams on the risk of giving an anesthetic to certain people. And there was one of the ladies who had qualified in England, but she came back to South Africa and she wanted to do the degree again. And I showed her a case of an aortic valve incompetence. Every single physical sign was present in this patient. And when we had presented it and the anesthetist had talked about the risks of an anesthetic to this person, she stood there with her mouth hanging open and she said, in all my career in England, I had never, ever seen a case like this. And that was more or less what happened every Friday on the rounds. But the other thing I wanted to say is, you know, I started a second career when I was well on in allergy. There was no one in South Africa who had specialized in allergy. And it was terribly hard. And I was very happy to be involved in the formation of the Allergy Society in South Africa and to do my research in that field. And now it's so much a well-established part of the curriculum of treating patients, and is also combined with the Immunology Society. So that was really a great improvement during my stay in the clinical world.
Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you so much for this wonderful reminiscence and the comments made by Arthur and Martin and Mike and you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gloria. That's really lovely. Tarek, did you want to say something? We'd love to hear from Tarek. Is a new doctor from Wits who stumbled on our website and found it interesting, and we've been very happy to keep in contact. Can you unmute? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. It's been wonderful to meet everyone virtually. So I stumbled across the website, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. I can't remember what I was looking up. I was looking up one of my old professors and I came across the website. I think I was looking up Philip Tobias or something along those lines. And I really, really enjoyed reading through all the stories and conversing with everyone over email. And it's been really, really enjoyable, really inspiring. I'm at the start of my career, so it's really wonderful to see what Wits graduates can achieve and everything the class of 1960 has done. So I graduated from Wits in 2022. I'm born in 99, so I think by then class had probably retired. I've completed my internship at Baragwanath, and now I'm doing my community service here in the rural Northwest. So it's been tricky, but I've realized now how good Wits has been in terms of prepping me for dealing with like rural healthcare and everything we see here. So it's really been inspiring to see what everyone's achieved, and to read the stories. And I mean, a lot has changed, but a lot has stayed the same. So it's been really inspiring to see what everyone's achieved, and know that we're getting a very good education from Wits. And I suppose as I go through my career, I do realize that now, while I'm mixing with everyone from all over the country and the world, it's really good to see, and it's really great for me to be here. And I appreciate everything the class has done. And I look forward. I haven't really read the ebook yet, but I'm looking forward to it, and I really do appreciate it. But thank you for having me here. And yeah,
thank you for coming. Mike Rosenberg, do you want to have the last word?
Oh my! Well, it is wonderful to think that an idea can generate and germinate such interest. And my great hope is that people will stay in touch. And my other great hope is that other classes will emulate what we've done and will contribute to the alma mater and help current medical students to get through. And I've cherished my relationship with Gary Katz and Ronnie Auerbach over, heaven's sake, seven decades, and Arthur, and I didn't know Martin very well from medical school, but I'm in touch with his great friend, Laurie Geffen, who I write to every month. And it is a class of, and Avray, who taught me how to think big, and others. And it's been an honor to work particularly with Geraldine, who is a genius at organization of material and putting the stories together. So it's been an accomplishment I am proud of, and we should all be proud of being part of it and being part of a community of helping people. Thank you. And one last word, of course, Didi, and who showed me that there are talents in South Africa today that are extraordinary, and that great people occur everywhere in the United States, in England, in Australia, and in South Africa. Thank you.
I think on that note, I'll say thank you. It's been really lovely to be with you all. Hope we can get together again. And I hope you enjoy the book and give it to your friends and your family and, whoever. So thanks a lot. And thank you, Didi, for enabling us to do this. Thank you, Peter. And, you seem to be muted, Peter.
I don't know. I just want to say it has been awesome. I'm just so in admiration of you, Geraldine, and the work you did with Chaim. Just incredible. So well done to you all, and well done to Didi.
Okay, thank you, and thank you all. And thank you, Didi.
So I'd just like to thank the class for sharing stories that I would have otherwise never came across, and also to have engaged with so many of you and known you closely also. I remember we once went to Dr. Gloria Davis's home, and we spoke to her, and we also other members of the class. And it is the humility and the sense of grounding all their work in helping others that really does make us feel like even we can make a difference. So thank you so much. And I'm proud to say that the library has now filed the ebook, and it will be available for future generations to come. Thank you, and have a good evening.